When I tuned into Caroline, she said Brenda's here, and they were like arm in arm, like we got this. It
That
was
is
a nudge.
such a good point, because so many people, before you get on this path, just think that those are my thoughts, and we don't give credit where it's due.
And I see, somebody has stolen something from somebody else or caused a tragedy or whatever, and I can look at that person and know that they are source.
I want to talk a little bit about health here. Bev, I can have Lynette edit this out. We didn't talk about it beforehand, but I know you would give a massive shock to people if you would. I'd love to hear your impressions of what it was like from the very beginning to be there as I learned to bring my guides through more fluently and more deeply.
And then, I think of the special moments when Jesus came through.
And somebody had M&Ms, and it kind of became, that was our way of celebrating with M&Ms.
In fact, Jesus referred to it later when he came in once and he said, "Get out the M&Ms." But it's an honor, and it's so wonderful to have the knowing not to be afraid of death, not to be afraid to talk about it.
How do you do that?
For me, Suzanne knows, I go up in my hot air balloon and look down. Look at the stage. We're all playing roles. It's stories, and you can just put it in a different perspective.
Hi, everybody. I'm always excited about my guests, but today is not just a guest. She is a dear friend, the staff director of Team Giesemann on the earthly plane, and someone who has been with me from the very beginning of this work journey with spirit. I did a little podcast a few weeks ago where I brought in all of my team members, and Spirit made it very clear that we could make a whole show out of each one of the beautiful people on this team that supports my work. And so we're going to start with the person who's been with me the longest, and that would be Bev Garlipp. So she has a lot to share with you about her journey of living the awakened way. And we all feel that we're normal people. So everybody has a story, and I'm really looking forward to Bev sharing with you her story. So let's bring Bev in now. Hey, Bev, come on in.
Hello.
We have so many people that have seen you doing the Q&As on the podcast. You always MC my monthly connection webinars, which have been going on for over 7 years now. So it's really funny, everybody. When I go on the road, if Bev isn't with me, Lynette will go with me, my other one of 5 assistants. And people will go up to Lynette and say, "Are you Bev?" And it just makes us all laugh because Bev is famous. So Bev, you shared your story about how you came to work for me on that other podcast. So we really don't need to go into that. But how long have you been working with me now?
It has been 14 years now.
Oh,
2010 we met.
Yeah. I really thought you were going to say 12. So gosh, the time has flown. Yeah. And were you, no, I don't want to ask it that way. How would you have described where you were on your spiritual journey 14 years ago?
That's easy, because I have always been sort of a seeker, and I read the books and I went to various workshops. In fact, that's how we met. A friend took me to your workshop, and I had a lot of the stories, but I always had this nagging doubt, like, I hope it's true. I hope all of those wonderful things are true, but nobody has the evidence.
And then when I met, for those
pardon me?
Yeah, for those who may be brand new to this, you hope what's true, and what were you seeking?
Just evidence of the afterlife, for sure. I had this church background, and I had the faith, but I didn't have the evidence, and that there was more to this life than just the human part of it. And when I met you, I heard stories of evidence, and I could cheer. It is true. It is true.
Well, so you heard stories, but what's going to make this program really special is that just like anybody who applies the Awakened Way teaching, you've had your own experiences. So we want to dive into that, everybody, during this hour. But why don't you describe your understanding of what it is like to live the Awakened Way? What is this path that we're talking about? In fact, there's the new book behind me. I don't think you can see it with that light. Just came out. Bev got her copy. I got mine, but everybody else is waiting for their copy to come out. The Awakened Way. Yeah. So what does that mean to you, Bev?
Okay. The title says a divinely guided life. And for me, that's what it means in really just everyday terms. It not necessarily have to be the big drama or the things that make the headlines. For me, it's every day in my life being tuned in, taking time to meditate and check in with guides, asking for help along the way. And that took me a while to learn, just to always ask for help, because our guides and the angels are standing by, wishing for nothing better than to help us. But we ask. So more and more, my life is just guided every day by checking in, meditating, and not a big deal, not an hour long, checking in for some days 3 minutes, some days 10 minutes, some days 20 minutes, but checking in, and then feeling like, okay, now my day is guided. I asked for the help. Whatever I needed is now in my field. Um, before I do a task for you, I ask for help. And then I read it later and think, who wrote that?
Well, I just want to tell everybody some of the things that Bev does is put together the emails that we send out. She puts the website together in the creative way. JS does the background work with all the technical things, but Bev runs everything right now. You have not just the creative know-how, but organizing so many things that we're constantly working on. And you have spreadsheets and to-do lists and checklists, and you don't drop balls. You just keep them all going in the air, but you do it with persistence. When the problem comes up, you dig in and you solve it, and then you make things even better. So everybody, it just could not have been gifted a better staff director than you. Truly, having worked with professionals in my Navy career and being used to working with top-notch people, I just feel so blessed that someone like you came into the staff. So thank you.
And even those little spreadsheets are guided. One of my requests every day is, don't forget to give me the nudges. If I forget something, give me a nudge. And those are just important as the big life questions. And I can't tell you how many times, I get this thought at the last minute, did you do this, Bev? And I say, thank you.
See,
it was a nudge.
Such a good point, because so many people, before you get on this path, just think that those are my thoughts, and we don't give credit where it's due. But you and I recognize that we are being guided, absolutely. And because you ask, you notice. Beautiful. So you have a guide. I'd love for you to talk about her, because people love knowing that we have helpers. Would you tell us how you came to know her, where the name came from, and how you use her?
Okay. I have a guide I called Caroline, and that name just came to me. And she came to me really when I started to work for you, Suzanne. I think of her as my Suzanne guide for the work that we do.
You need help to deal.
And again, not with big lights and bells and whistles, but subtly into my mind came the thought of this helper. in my mind, she's sort of a character. She loves to dress in red. And she's sort of the I've got your back, Bev, kind of person, and really gives me confidence in the work that we do. Simple things like sometimes I have to choose a daily message, and I ask Caroline, and
Can I interrupt
and
you
a
a second?
word.
Hang on a
I'm
second.
sure.
The daily messages are part of the Awakened Way app, and we put those out by email, and I get them every morning in meditation. But there's times maybe once a quarter when I'm flying and I have to leave so early in the morning. There's no way I can get a message and post it before heading out at 4 in the morning or something. And well, of course there is a way, but I don't want to. I'm not willing to. So the night before, I will text Bev and say, hey, can you choose a rerun of a message from the 5,000 that are in the archives? So with that background, how do you do that?
Right. And I don't, where am I going to start with 5,000 out there? And so I always ask Caroline, what do we need today? And I will get a word. Maybe it'll be a month like October, or maybe it will be an event like a holiday, or maybe it's just a random word. And I search for that in the search box for the daily messages, and something will come up, and I may look at 3 or 4 messages, but one of them will really stand out, and so I pick that one, and without fail, someone will say that was just for me. I needed that message today, or there'll be several comments on it that it was very timely. There might even be an event that happens later in the day that it ties into, so it just always amazes me. That of course they come up with the perfect one.
Well, see,
So,
this is what I love, everybody, that Bev applies everything that we share with all of you. And so this is why I wanted to get you on the show, Bev, to share everybody how living the awakened way is really just a natural part of everything we do, but we have to work it. You have to be the one that makes the effort to meditate every day, even if it's only through 3 minutes, who remembers to ask your guide for help and to ask the questions, and you're doing that.
yeah, the thing that strikes me is just the everyday part. When I knew that you were going to do this show, my first thought was, but I don't have any like wow big drama events to report on. But it occurred to me that it's the everyday things, checking in every day, that the awakened way is for the day-to-day things. And often the things we hear about are big dramas, uh, because those are the people who are publicly speaking about an event or a near-death experience, or are just off the top of the mountain, spiritually transformative experience. And mine have been a steady growth of every day. To me, they're little wows during the day, but it's not something that I would sit down and write about. It was um, even things like seeing repeating numbers. Today, I was feeling a little bit stressed out. Um, some unexpected things came onto our schedule today, and I was thinking about this interview, and I looked at my phone and it said 11:11, and
Oh,
immediately I said, thanks, guys. I just needed that little bit of reassurance. And those
so
are the
it
things you
snagged
start
you.
to notice.
They snagged you at that moment, and that to me is spirit saying, we've got your back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Bev, you have shared this before. You shared it in that podcast I referenced. We'll put a link to that podcast where I interviewed my whole staff. But tell us about where you were when your husband passed, both physically and spiritually, and if you've had any signs from him.
Sure. At that point in my life, I was 51 years old. He was 51 years old. Sort of we were thinking on top of our game, and we're sitting at the breakfast table, actually planning a weekend. And in mid-sentence, Dennis just fell off his chair, and he passed from a heart attack that quickly. So I remember telling my kids, we hear that phrase, life can change in a split second. It's even faster than a split second. It happens that quickly. And at that point, I had the faith to know that he was fine. Those of us left behind, our kids, we were devastated. It was sudden. We weren't prepared for it. For us, it was really difficult, but I knew he was fine, and I could reassure the kids, he's fine. He's in a good place. He's fine. But I didn't have all of the knowing that I have now. But one particular sign that forever will be my favorite, and I have to back up a little bit. I was not known for having a green thumb, and my husband Dennis would joke about that. We had a Christmas cactus, and it never bloomed. It never bloomed, and every Christmas he would say, maybe next Christmas, Bev," and it just never bloomed. But I kept it. And Dennis died on February 7th, and there's a flurry of relatives, of course, and visitors and people in my house staying. And on the first day, when everybody had to fly back to their homes, we've been through a funeral, and it's the first morning that I'm all alone in the house. And I came downstairs, and there was the Christmas cactus in full bloom. And this is February, not December. And I just knew, I just knew that was Dennis saying, I am fine. I am fine. And he had a sense of humor. So it was like, see, I can make the Christmas cactus bloom or whatever. So I didn't have the knowing then, but I knew enough to know that was a sign from him, and was totally from that side.
Beautiful. Now, I know I've brought Dennis through doing a reading or two for you. Had you been to other mediums before that reading?
Only one, and I was very, very new, and right after Dennis passed, to mediumship. I didn't really know many mediums, but a friend told me about one they thought was good. His name was Dennis. I can't remember. He was out west someplace. That's all I remember about him. And I didn't know enough then to understand, what great evidence was. But now I look back and I realize there was some. For instance, he kept saying to me, I'm hearing the same as you, the same as you. And he's pointing to me. And then it clicked. They were both Dennis.
Yeah.
So, he couldn't get the word Dennis across, but he could get the message, the same as you, the same as you, and described a couple events that we had been to. So that gave me reassurance. Still not the level of knowing that I have today by any means.
Yeah. So you have sat in on quite a few of my classes that I teach in person. Certainly you've helped to edit all the online classes that I have, my own proprietary classes. So you've had your share of mediumship teaching. And I know that anytime you've sat in on my classes, if we had an odd number of students when it came time to pair up and practice readings, I say, hey, Bev, why don't you pair up with someone so that everybody has a chance? I'd love for you to share with people what your experience was, because here you are, not your calling to be a medium, but thrown into the fire in a classroom situation. How did that go? I'm asking because I really didn't remember.
Of course, my first reaction was always, oh, I hope there's an even number. I hope there's an even number. So I don't have to be a student, but I would have to be a student. And I remember in the class, Suzanne, you would always tell us, have fun with this, just have fun with this, dance with spirit. And I would remind myself, Bev, just have fun with it. It's a safe environment. These are students practicing, just have fun with it. And I would, go deeper, get silent. And every time I got some pieces of evidence that were right on, and it surprised me. It blew me away.
Yeah. Yeah, we all have this ability. That's the whole point of this, that you don't have to take a mediumship class only if you feel you're drawn to be a medium. We can all learn to connect with our loved ones, and you were connecting with other people's loved ones. So it is mind-blowing when that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of other people's loved ones, I'm going to tell you some things about Bev that she wouldn't tell you, but we should call her Saint Bev. She is so helpful to people. She's the person you want around you if you need a helping hand, if you need a kind, compassionate heart. Bev and I lived just a few miles away from each other for 10 of those 14 years. I moved away maybe it's 9, moved away about 5 years ago. Yeah. And until that time, Bev knew my mother, who lived also just a couple miles away from me. We lived in the same community. And Bev helped to take care of my mother when I was on the road on tour. Not all the time, but if you would go to visit her just to be friendly once in a while, wouldn't you?
Oh, sure. It was always fun to visit Ruthie.
My mom was a character, and she was in her late 80s. She passed at 91, but I remember she was probably at least 89. I'd been on the road for a few months, and I had to fly to England. And my flight had a layover in Orlando, which is only 1 hour from where you and my mom lived. And Bev brought my mom to the Orlando airport, picked her up at her house. My mom couldn't drive anymore. When she got to the airport, got her a wheelchair, wheeled her inside to the food court. I left security because I had like a 3-hour layover. And thanks to Bev, I was able to spend an hour with Bev and my mom just sitting around having coffee in the food court. And then you pushed her back in the wheelchair, went out to the parking lot, got the car. The hassle you went through just touched my heart and my mom's so much. It was just so indicative of what Bev would do for anybody. And then the other thing, of course, is that, of course, Bev knows, but you all don't. Bev was there with me when my mom was in hospice, in an actual hospice building. And she lingered for several weeks. And Bev actually stood watch with my mom, sat vigil with her, with several other dear, dear friends, Lynn and Lois and Elizabeth. And Bev would come and sit with us. And then if no family members could be here, you were there in her final days. So you really have a special place in our family's heart. So thank you.
That was an honor, an honor and a blessing to be with her, and special time.
Yeah. Well, one other thing that Bev got to participate in is the Heart Circle. And what that was it was a development circle, but with a very special purpose. It was to help me improve and practice and learn to channel my guide, Sanaya. So unlike a regular spiritualist development circle where everybody gets messages from spirit, we set up this group of friends that would come to my house every Sunday, like clockwork, at 7 p.m. We got up to 12 people and then stopped it there, who would ask questions of Sanaya, my guides, when I was channeling. I'd love to hear your impressions of what it was like from the very beginning to be there as I learned to bring my guides through more fluently and more deeply.
Yeah. Obviously, it was awe-inspiring. And in the beginning, I think, we were all just awestruck.
Me too.
And
yeah.
It was surreal almost. And we knew it was real, and we knew with all of the integrity and that it was real and it was happening, but we were just awestruck. And we became more comfortable and your channeling it improved and became more relaxed. And then, I think of the special moments when Jesus came through, and the first time we celebrated with M&Ms when it was all done.
I can't remember why that was. Somebody had brought we always had snacks afterwards and sat around and talked about what we'd all experienced. The energy was so powerful, so loving. That's why we called ourselves the Heart Circle instead of the Home Circle. And somebody had M&Ms and it it kind of became, that was our way of celebrating with M&Ms.
In fact, Jesus referred to it later when he came in once and he said, "Get out the M&Ms." And
Uh-oh.
so referred back to that event. But it was just an incredible energy. Um, and it's just everything was so real. You just knew that the spirit was right next to us. It wasn't up there or over there. It was right there in the circle.
Yeah.
And to be able to ask questions and get answers directly from spirit was just an incredible experience.
Yeah, every week. 2 members of that group have passed.
Mm.
That's 2, right? Yeah. Yeah. Donna Kelly,
And
in my book, Messages of Hope, who was so close to you, probably the closest friend that you both had there before she passed. And then Anne Lavelle, who was in the documentary Messages of Hope, the woman I gave the reading to in that documentary. And once again, you were there for both of them in their final hours. So I feel that you're almost like a doula yourself, someone that helps cross.
But it's an honor, and it's so wonderful to have the knowing not to be afraid of death, not to be afraid to talk about it. Donna and I could talk freely and with peace when she was in her final days. And I thought, what a blessing to come to that point in our lives that, death was nothing to fear at all. It was the next chapter, open the door. And Donna could talk about it and be totally at peace with knowing that she would be crossing over within days.
Yeah.
So,
They were very blessed to have you with them. And speaking of peace, how has this changed the way you interact with family members and with friends, living the awakened way, knowing what you do, just living this way every day with the awareness that you're being guided, that you're not alone, all the things that awakened living brings to us?
that has been a huge difference. I've learned to be centered and not get sucked into the drama. We're human. The drama still happens. Family things, people push each other's buttons. The headlines in the news push all of our buttons. And yet I've just learned this is not all there is. I can go to from a whole different perspective.
How do you do that?
Where For me, Suzanne knows I go up in my hot air balloon and look down. Look at the stage. We're all playing roles. It's stories, and you can just put it in a different perspective. It's made me much more, forgiving, less judgmental. I even practice when looking at the newspaper, and I see, somebody has stolen something from somebody else or caused a tragedy or whatever, and I can look at that person and know that they are source, and I can send them love, send the victim love, send them love, send myself love as I look at the photo. And um, years ago it would have been a very emotional reaction, and into the drama, and isn't that terrible, and feeling helpless because I can't do anything about it. And now I know we can do something about it. We can send love, and that's very powerful. Sending we may never see how it affected that person, but I say to so many people, love is the most powerful energy, love and light there is, and we can send it across the globe, and it does make a difference. So I stop feeling helpless at those world events.
See, people listening to this, I can hear a bunch of you saying, I need to be like that. I need to get like that. And it's a gradual process, right? It comes from setting your intention. Being
And it comes with repetition and repetition and repetition of hearing the truths and the evidence in many different ways from different people. Um, just seeing evidence yourself, like,
yeah.
wow, it did turn out that way. Um, you know, for years, whenever I would see somebody stopped, maybe at the edge of the road, they had a flat tire or something was wrong. Um, you know, just for safety reasons alone, you don't stop. Especially if you're a woman alone and it's at night. I mean, you can't stop and help them change the tire. But I always called on the angels to come and help them. So I know in some way somebody came along to their rescue, and maybe I helped that.
I know you did. I want to tell everybody that when I get kudos from people in our beautiful Awaken Way community, people send me emails or thank yous or stories about what a difference applying the tools has made in their life. I forward those to the other members of my team and I say, these belong to you as well. We do this together. Look at what a difference we are making. And that just spreads out. We talk about ripples. Ooh, got the goosebumps with that. We talk about ripples all the time. And so just all of you listening to this podcast, watching the video, you know, all we have to do is just live this way. The things that Bev's talking about, it brings peace to others. It brings peace to us. I want to talk a little bit about health here. Bev, I can have Lynette edit this out. We didn't talk about it beforehand, but I know you would give a massive shock to people if you wouldn't mind telling everybody how old you are.
I am 76, 77 in August.
Can you believe that? Can you believe that? And working strong, working hard. And I know you've told me you're going to be part of this team till the day you die. We can't stop, right? It's not work, is it?
No, it's not work. You know, it's a mission. You know, I may slow down, but I can't leave it entirely. I can't imagine not having it as part of my life.
Yeah.
So
We've brought Stephanie into this mission we call Free Bev, because really, Bev, there are times when we're juggling so many balls and you're the only one you were until this point who could do certain things. So Stephanie, who y'all met in that other program, and I'll have her back on, is lightening the load and learning to do a lot of the things you do. But your creativity, we're going to use you as long as you're willing to help us. So wonderful. But you've not been without your health challenges. You don't need to go into that, any specifics, but if you could talk about what you've learned about energy healing or how the thought process of living the Awakened Way has helped you deal with those things.
yeah, definitely. As I say over and over again, you know, we are living this human experience, and no matter how far along the path we are in living the awakened way, human things happen, and we get diagnosed with a disease, or we fall and break a bone, or whatever. Those things happen. But I've discovered that my thoughts make such a difference. Um, and then there's times when you have to go beyond that and you reach out to an energy healer, and that would have been totally foreign to me, you know, 20 years ago, and now it's makes all the sense in the world.
Well, I have to
And
give you credit, Bev, because I did reach out to a friend when you were going through a rough patch a while back, and you worked with her because Spirit guided, this is the person for you for this particular issue you're dealing with. And I just remember when you wrote to me, and this woman had given you this list of activities to do, which even to us sounded a little out there. You know, do this, use these products, use these crystals, and do this practice. And you said, I am going to follow this to the letter. I'm not even sure I would have, but you said you were, and you really experienced miracles.
I did. Again, you know, you hope it's going to happen, but until it actually happens to you, and there's no other explanation, I didn't do anything differently than follow some of these energy exercises. There were some crystals, some spiritual tools, and it worked. It absolutely worked. And I was in a place where for a while, as I told Suzanne, I was pulling out all the tools I knew how to pull out from our tool bag of things we've learned from the things you've taught us along the way, Suzanne, and nothing was working. Nothing was working.
Let me just
And this
interrupt you a
healer.
second. I knew something was wrong when we were making the decision about going on the Mediterranean cruise. Do you remember? I remember where I was when I was talking to you on the phone, and I said, well, you're going, right? Because I need you and I want you and I want you to have fun, the Mediterranean cruise in September. And you said, well, I'm just not sure, because you just weren't yourself and you were tired. And you got to the point where you said, I'm in, and with excitement and knowing you could handle it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, for everyone out there, use the tools and your thoughts. But if it comes to a point where you need more help than that, then we reach out to wonderful energy healers, and it works.
Yeah. Hang on just a second. Okay, so we've covered a lot of topics here, but I'm snagged by a photo that I can see behind you. It looks like to your left shoulder. I've been in your house, so that is your left shoulder. And I recognize that picture. Why don't you share with everybody what magical moment that arises from?
Another, there's no other explanation. One of our team members, Valerie, is really can tune in quite well herself, and she offered one day to do a reading, and the way she does that is to draw a picture of what she's seeing or sensing. And even though we've known each other for a while, she doesn't know my background at all. And as she's starting to draw, she is telling me that she sees a man in a field and a building and tractors, and it looks like a farm. And I said, well, yeah, I grew up on a dairy farm. That's my dad. And she said, but he's not dressed like a farmer. He's dressed like in a uniform. And I said, because my dad, when he came back from World War II, always just wanted to look sharp when he was out working, and he wore a uniform, like a khaki shirt and khaki pants, like sort of like a car mechanic would have. Yeah. Or sage green and green. Wow. He wore uniform, had to look sharp when he was working, unless he was doing something really messy, and then he might have blue jeans on. And she saw neighbors going by, and everybody would wave. And I said, they called my dad Happy Harry because he was the neighbor that everybody would stop and talk to. And this is out in the country, so a neighbor would be going by in a vehicle of some sort. And there were many other little pieces of evidence that I was just amazed that she picked up and she was putting in this photo. And she said, oh, and I see all these grandchildren around. Your dad loves the grandchildren around, and drew the picture. And I didn't think about it later, but it was so accurate that when I counted the grandchildren, you can see them there, it was not only the right number, it was the right number of girls and boys that Valerie had actually tuned into. So again, there's no other explanation.
And I will have Valerie on as a special guest, just like I have you today. But she's not a practicing medium, but she has worked for mediums and worked for me now for a year or more. And I just looked down, and here where I am, it's 4:44. So there's a snag. My angelic team. So way to go, Valerie, and how thrilling for you. And just, again, validation for all of us that our loved ones are just here when we call on them. Love to work with mediums. And Valerie has that special skill of drawing what she saw. So you have this tangible gift that you can always look at that and remember your loved ones gathered around. Beautiful.
Yeah.
So speaking of angelic helpers, I hear we can close this beautiful interview out with a story you have from anybody in the United States would know this as one of those awful things we have to deal with in America. If you're outside the country, perhaps you have your own version of hell. For us, it's called the DMV, the Department of Motor Vehicles. And it's usually, you could tell everybody why it's awful, Bev, but I don't know what story you're going to tell here. So take
Okay,
it
this
away.
is very, very recent and just another example of how I always ask the angels to help. And my son-in-law and I had to go to the Department of Motor Vehicles together because he was going to register a car that was mine. We were going to switch the registration to him. He had sold an old car, so he had to, get the license plates turned in from that old car. So it was like this 5 or 6 step process, and we both dreaded it. We said, because normally there's a room full of people and most of them are not in a good mood because they have to do these transactions and something goes wrong and
You never
the
have the right
clerks are
paperwork, right?
no, and they send you back and forth. And, I almost expected that we probably didn't have a right piece of paper and would have to come back another time. But I said, I'm going to ask the angels, could this just go as smoothly as possible? And we walked in, and number one, there was nobody else waiting. That was miracle number one.
That's
And
impossible.
we got right in, and the person we were assigned to had a name tag that said head. So she was the head of the department and knew all the ins and outs and all the little details, and took the first piece of paper and said, oh, no problem, show me your license. That was taken care of. The next one, that we were out of there in 10 minutes with license plates turned in and all the registrations with the right person. And I literally, I looked at my son-in-law and said, that was the angels.
I always hear these stories and listen to my guests, trying to listen through the ears of the audience. And there are probably some people out there who say, yeah, well, you just got lucky. But okay, maybe. But also, we got lucky because, Bev, you're living the awakened way. You called on your helpers, you trust them, and life flows. What's the lesson we learned about hitting walls?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. The
Yeah.
San Diego lesson, I call it. That I don't know if you remember, Suzanne, we were planning an event in San Diego, and I just kept hitting walls. A no here and a no there, and an almost yes. And we thought we were all set, and then along came another event, and it bumped us out. And I called you up and said, Suzanne, I'm running out of ideas. I'm just hitting all these walls, trying to get an event place in San Diego. And you reminded me that if we're hitting walls, it's not meant to be. And then as it turned out, your mom needed some minor surgery, but you had to come home for that. And it was the exact dates that we would have been in San Diego. So the signs and the helpers are all around us. I think we just need to pay attention and not just say, oh, well, that was a coincidence or that was lucky.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah. Well, Bev, you just said it. That's the perfect way to end this program. The signs are all around us, but the helpers are all around us. And yes, we have angels, but I have Saint Bev. I have angelic helpers on my team. And you may feel, she said to me on a break that we took here that she feels like she's just droning on. I know you would all disagree with her, that everything you share with us are just little jewels that we can all apply in our lives. And we don't have to be out there in the public making a difference when you're sending ripples just by every kind act you do and harnessing your thoughts. How about final thoughts for everybody?
My first thought is don't compare yourself to anybody. Don't compare yourself to me or Suzanne or anybody. We're all at the perfect place to start right where we are. And I think, again, so many times the people we see in the public, of course, are further down along the path, or they're professional mediums or healers or whatever. And we start to feel like, well, everybody else can do it, but not me. Well, we all have our abilities and gifts, and we're all a soul. So don't compare yourself to anyone. And the other one is gratitude. That And Suzanne, I think that the greatest lesson for me in this was when your mom did pass, and you said, you know, when I find myself slipping into the grief, I go to gratitude. I had her for so many years, and I have so many good memories, and that gratitude lifts me up. And I use that all the time. Even if it's a day when you just wake up and you're out of sorts and you're feeling blue and you don't even know why, just think of the smallest thing to be grateful for. And I'm amazed at how that brings the energy up a notch. And then you can go up another notch. And before you know it, you're feeling okay. So
Well,
those are my two.
I am overflowing with gratitude for Bev, everybody. If you can't tell, all you have to do is go to my website, and so many of the little details there, and the creative banners, and the fun things, the gifts and contests that we have. These are Bev's brainchildren. It's just an absolute blessing to have her on our team, and I hope that you've enjoyed this program as much as I have. Bev, thank you so much. Thank you for being with me since the very beginning, when we sat around the kitchen table planning the first Messages of Hope tour. And here we are, and we're just going to keep going as long as Spirit asks us to. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And thank you, everybody, for joining us. I know this warmed your heart as much as it did mine. So go out and spread those ripples. We love you. Bye-bye.